morning. Can you hear me? Is that great? Okay. Okay, well, thank you very much for coming out to the very beginning, the orientation of Rifflandia Gathering, and this is the first Rifflandia Gathering ever, so I appreciate you being here right at, and most of you were here at 10 o'clock, so well done. At 10:30, we're going to start off with our first panel, but I thought I would give you an overview of what to expect for the three-day conference that we're putting together. So I'd like to start off by acknowledging that we're on the traditional territories of the Songhees and Esquimalt nations, in whose traditional territories we have the privilege to live, work, and play. I'd also like to tell you, and I can list the sponsors, which I will do, but I will also tell you that without the support of sponsors and the granting organizations, you know, you just can't possibly make something like this happen. So when I'm finished, I'll read those. And it's really important to acknowledge those people and those organizations for their support. So today, Thursday, we start off, and there are 4 panel sessions right in here in Ticket Rocket. Ticket Rocket's our main hub. This is where everybody hopefully comes to and knows to come to either purchase their tickets, pick up their tickets, and be able to attend Rifflandia Gathering. The blue wristband is lovely blue sparkly wristband is the conference wristband. Just so you know that it gets you into the conference. It's not part of the festival wristband. It's for $15 or $40, whatever you paid as a musician, or $80 as a delegate. It is actually for the conference portion of it. Everybody here should have received, when they walked in, a ticket to the Mingler that is tonight, that is being sponsored by Cordova Bay, and it's at the Strathcona rooftop patio, and there will be, in total there are about 75 panelists that will be here, and that doesn't include, like, there's lots of different industry people in town, so please come out. Please introduce yourself and give people your elevator pitch, because that's why they're here. They're here to mentor, talk, discuss, and engage with you and try to enrich and encourage your musical aspirations. And really that's what sort of the theme of all of this was about, there's such a huge recognition these days that musicians more and more have to, it's a DIY world. And there's so many different aspects of it that you just have to know in order to grow and learn. And it's sometimes in the sports world, I always compare it, like in the sports world, everything seems to be connected. There's teams and all that kind of stuff. And the music community really needs to support each other and be able to have to listen and communicate. And that's all levels of the industry and all the diversity of the industry. It needs to, we need to have these opportunities like a conference or minglers I don't actually just think it should be this one here. And I'd like to just point out Darb Erickson is here from the city of Victoria, and the city has been really instrumental in trying to move forward some like 5-year strategic plans and to remove kind of barriers for making it easier for venues to stay open and all sorts of different great things. So keep it up. So we have the 4 panels today here, and then tomorrow at Ticket Rocket again, there are panel sessions. There's the panel sessions in the morning. In the afternoon, there are 2 panel sessions. Those are being brought to you by Music BC, and those are actually free. If you have a friend who decided that they didn't want to buy a ticket, those are being supported by Music BC and their international delegates. Panel sessions, and the international delegates as well, just so you know, will be at various minglers as well if you wanted to talk to them. Oh no, I can't do you. No. So tomorrow, as well as Ticket Rocket, we also have the pleasure of using the Royal Theatre. So what we've done is the panel sessions will take place on the stage. So you'll come in through the main, like the lobby where you would purchase tickets. You'll walk straight through, and when the doors open, there will be ushers there, and you'll go up onto the stairs and then onto the stage. And that will be for the first 3 panel sessions. And then for anybody who signed up and was lucky enough to get into We Are Full, the performance and feedback session, people will sit in the first 7 rows, and people will actually get an opportunity to perform at the Royal, which is pretty cool. I was really thrilled that they said yes to that. The one-on-one sessions are available as well on Friday and Saturday at the Royal. Same thing, go in through the main doors and you'll wait kind of there in the vestibule area. And the one-on-one sessions will be on the left-hand side. And there'll just be tables, and basically it's you and one other person that you've signed up to meet and greet. And you can get information, and the sign-up sheets are on the table on the right at the back, so please feel free to take an opportunity, if you haven't already, and sign up for those sessions, because that's how you meet people. If you've got a business card, bring it. If you don't, maybe make one, I don't know. But you know what? These people can give you their contact information when you meet them. The onus is on you. You need to follow up. You need to collect their information. You need to follow up. You need to say, hey, I met you. It was really a pleasure. Thanks so much for talking to me. And then maybe 6 months down the road, you've got something to actually send them and give them. So take advantage of those, and that's why they're there to mentor you and to provide you with that information. On Saturday, we have panel sessions again here at Ticket Rocket, and then the other venue is Fort Victoria. And those sessions are going to be, the first 2 are presentations. The first one is a SOCAN presentation, PowerPoint presentation. If you want to know how you get money, you should probably go to that one. Learn how to connect with SOCAN, learn how to understand what the royalty collection process is. And you'll notice a SOCAN person is actually attending the publishing and licensing as well, because publishing and licensing, should you get your music placed in a Food Network show, you need to know. The responsibility is on you. What do I need, and how is it that I'm going to make money off this, right? So make sure you understand the concept of a cue sheet, because it's like everything is different in the movie industry than it is from general if you're just performing. So there's royalties out there for you. So understand how to get them. The next presentation after that is Creative BC. And Creative BC they will explain all of the various grants that you can apply for, and you can meet the particular person that is in charge of that grant. They divide it up, so there's one person in charge of like these 3 and one person in charge of these 3 kind of thing. There are some panel sessions after that continue at Fort Victoria, and one-on-one sessions as well at the Royal. We don't have the stage at the Royal because the Symphony Orchestra is performing, and we have to make sure we're really quiet when we do but that's okay. They were very accommodating for us to use that space. So I don't know if I've covered everything there. Is there anybody who has any questions sort of generically about what's happening over the 3 days? Great. Oh, yes.
Are there any tickets to tonight's extra tickets for partners?
Yeah, if you want to have one person, I don't have spare tickets, but I can. If you go out to the front, I've asked them to add the name onto the guest list, so you can do that. Okay. Any other questions? Okay, I think what we'll do then is we'll start with the first panel that is being. Oh, wait, you know what? I needed to acknowledge all the sponsors, so I'm just going to let you know. So, Creative BC. I hope all of you know who Creative BC is. It's the provincial funding agency, and Factor is the national music funding agency. SOCAN, Music BC, Cordova Bay Entertainment Group, Tourism Victoria, DMCL, and of course, TC Helicon, that is bringing you and sponsoring the first 2 panel sessions this morning. So I'm just going to put the mic down and I'll ask TC Helicon to come up.
Cool. I can awkwardly sit by myself up here. Cool, so where did we end off for the sponsor list, Deb?
We ended at TC Helicon.
Oh, you ended at us. Okay, awesome. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start with myself. I'll tell you a little bit about me and Helicon and all that, and then we will bring up our illustrious guests. We are down one guest today because somebody had a family emergency. We'll say they're doing a bank job or something fun. So TC Helicon is a vocal effects company, predominantly. Actually started in Victoria about 20 years ago, and ended up partnering up with the TC Group, which was TC Electronic, if you know them, for guitar pedals and studio gear and all that kind of stuff. We handle the vocal effects side of things with some cool magic that allows you to play your guitar or keyboard into a magic box and sing and produce harmonies around your own voice. So that was sort of what the company was built upon. We like to think of ourselves as the company that brings the same amount of control to your vocals that a guitar player gets to take to a show. So you can imagine walking in and a sound person, making the guitar player hand over all of their guitar pedals and then sitting there going like this the whole time randomly because they don't know the song. Vocalists kind of end up in that situation. You stand up on stage and you sing, and if you're not carrying your own sound person, you don't really have a lot of say in what's going on in the front of house. So we provide the tools that allow you to have the right echo at the right time and the right distortion at the right time and all that kind of stuff, which is really, really fun. Today's panel is going to talk about how to take a studio sound to stage. And I think there is tons of different ways that can happen. You can approach it as a direct, we're trying to do a one-to-one replication, or we're completely different, and how do we handle that? So it's going to be a really interesting discussion. I'm going to now bring up the panel. So first up is Alexandra Mayo. Can you come up and join me, please, my lady? Yeah, exactly, right? Slow walk, slow clap. So Alexandra is a singer, songwriter, performer extraordinaire, and will be giving some insight onto how she deals with a lot of these situations when you've done some recording and want to get it up live. There you go. You can, move it over. There you go. Excellent. Yeah, bring it in so we can be like all nice and comfy. Cool. And secondly, we've got Mark Owen Flood, who is in the band of Rascals and is also a producer, so he's going to lend his insight as well. Come on up here. Malcolm, Malcolm, I'm so sorry. But see, I wrote it down and then couldn't read my own doctor writing. I'm actually a surgeon. And last but not least, we have, what's your name again? Ellie Hart, who works at TC Helicon, and she's also in Dirty Mountain and does all sorts of cool singer-songwriter stuff as well. Now I'm going to awkwardly pull out my phone, which you shouldn't do on a panel, but that's where the questions are, so bear with me for 2 seconds. Alrighty. There they are. Okay, cool. So I think a lot of artists run into this situation when they're starting out. You start looking for shows, and you book your first gig. You don't really know what to do next. You've got a date, you've got a load-in time, or you've got a show time, or anything like that. And there's probably better things to do than just show up at that time without talking to anybody in advance. So I thought it'd be kind of cool to run down the line and have you guys kind of explain, you've got the gig. Literally, what do you do next? What is your first step?
Tell your mom.
Well, yeah, okay, that too.
Yeah, step number one.
Why don't you guys go ahead?
Well, a good example would be when you show up to a gig and there is no PA system or no sound system or no sound guy, and that obviously brings a whole lot of trouble. So I thought that would be very avoidable if you actually contacted the venue and asked about, is there a sound tech? What is the sound rig? Try and get in touch with the sound tech personally, and you'll thank yourself forever. You'll never run into that situation, which I've run into 3 times because I don't follow my own advice.
Yeah, I found if you just make a template, even just finding out your load-in times, will there be a sound check? What time will that be?
yeah, what gear is available? Will there be lighting? Like just anything. Is there a bathroom? Any question that you might have. If you just have this preloaded template, then you can just email it to like advance all of your shows, and then they probably won't respond. So then you mark it in your calendar to follow up a week later, and you should do this probably all 4 months in advance or 3 months in advance. And then when you get the answers, put them in another folder, and then have that right. Like, yeah, do yourself the favor, because when you're on the road, then it's like, where am I staying? There's too many details to keep track of. So if the more information you can gather well in advance, future you will thank you.
Yeah, definitely. I think that's like so important, is just like being prepared. Like just get all of the like 5 W's and like have them 100% confirmed.
So you're talking to the second, why are you a sound?
Yeah, why are we here? Know that answer. No, but I kind of follow what you do, Ellie. I have like a Google document where I fill in a bunch of possible tour dates, and underneath it I have like all of the information, like day of contact, phone number, accommodation, address, where are we staying, and just like everything. Also like knowing if you're getting paid or not. It just kind of depends on what sort of tour you're going to be doing, I guess. But yeah.
If you want to get really fancy, you can draft up a memorandum of understanding that clearly states what your deal is, because that's another thing, is sometimes they're like, oh, we're not paying you, and you're like, what do you mean you're not paying me?
Yeah.
Avoid the awkward conversations.
Yeah, so you can be like, look, we had a an MOA, an MOU.
The word of the day is...
The other thing I've actually started doing too is getting a deposit ahead of time, like a guarantee. Okay, so the guarantee is X amount. I require 25% ahead of time or 50% ahead of time. Yeah. And I also have started adding, now I'm like really getting into it, I've also started adding a cancellation thing if you cancel on us, because I've had that a couple times now, to get at least 50%.
Right.
Yeah, just draft up a contract or something.
Yeah. And that might like sound awkward to ask for, but it's way less awkward than when those situations happen. When you show up and they say they're not paying you, and you've got to pull up emails, like it's way less awkward if you do this in advance. And the same with the cancellation thing. If they cancel, they're just going to do it. They already talked about it. Where if they cancel and you haven't got that agreement in place, it's going to be, you're going to have to kind of hunt them down on it a little bit, and that's no fun.
Yeah, and if they're any venue worth their salt, it's not like they don't deal with that stuff all the time. Yeah. You're kind of the new outlier, or they're just an amateur band. But if you come at them with all of that stuff, it sort of presents a different front. I mean, you are who you present yourself as, and if you present professionalism, they'll treat you that way, generally. And fight for a sound check. Always fight for a sound check. Okay, so I think everybody who performs in any way or another, I mean, you talked about not having a sound system at all. I think everybody's got some nightmare stories about how sound went horribly awry. So it'd be kind of cool to hear your worst sound experiences, and also, what did you do in the moment to actually try and fix the situation?
Who wants to go first here?
I actually had a very recent experience, and I've been playing music for over 10 years, and so I've had to deal with a lot of things, but I think this last one really stuck out to me because I don't often come across female sound engineers, and I was quite excited that the person that I was meeting was the owner of the place as well. So, but I think that I must have not communicated very well with her. So there was just like this like kind of awkward situation, and then there was like it's kind of hard to explain, but she had a strange little setup for her live sound where she had a speaker outside of her business as well, so people from on the street could come and listen. And so she plugged in like a line out into my amp instead of having microphones, and it actually broke my amp. And so I don't know, it was just like, it was one of those situations where I've never been in it before. I'm like, oh no, how do I navigate this? I just have to buy another amp. But I mean, I don't know, it was just kind of strange. You just like never really know what you're gonna come up against. And I think just like trying to be as like professional and respectful as possible, even if things start going really bad. That's just like the most important thing, because at the end of the day, it's how you kind of carry yourself, and you're gonna have to deal with everything. So just like deal with it.
So what happened? How did you actually end up with, like, what happened in that gig with your busted amp?
So it broke. So I had to like plug my guitar in directly into the PA.
Yeah.
And just went with it from there. I don't know. It was what it was.
Yeah, for sure.
My worst experience I remember vividly, and it was 3 years ago now. It was actually our very first gig as Dirty Mountain. And it was like a full sound, like it was a professional, and he had the whole rig, and it was kind of a different venue. Anyways, the monitors didn't work, and only one of the front of house speakers was working. And there was 200 people screaming drunk. So it was a really interesting first gig experience, coupled with the sound is not working. So I think we just like turned the speaker like kind of sideways and just rocked on. I think in retrospect, I should have stormed off the stage in anger.
Do the whole "I'll be in my trailer." And
Yeah, how dare you? But no, I think we just powered through it. But my rule with my band is always be the nicest person anyone has ever met. So no matter how angry you are and how upset you are, because you never know, that person might be like best friends with, I don't know, you never know who people are best friends with or related to ever. Like you could think, yeah, it's especially in Victoria, everyone knows everyone, but even Canada, you'll learn the music industry is incredibly small. So just always be the nicest person,
Yeah,
no matter what. Unless they literally are negligent and break your stuff. In that case, still be nice, but be like, look.
Just don't play there.
Yeah, don't
yeah. Malcolm, how about you?
I think the no PA system, where it wasn't like recently, I'm going to go with the recent one because you did as well. And there's I won't name the venue, but in the Revelstoke area, there's a little venue that had like one little PA speaker working. And so no monitors either, same kind of thing. So like, how do you navigate that? And my band's so like over the top loud, where we really don't need to be, but like we just can't help it. And so we just we set it up. You know, it pays to look into how to do sound a little bit. So you know, like they didn't even have a mic cable, so we had to kind of jimmy rig that together with some adapters. And I just went out there and got the guys to play. I had a wireless rig, and I just listened, and we turned down amps, you know, switched to brushes, whatever you need to do to just get it sound okay, and then you just go for it. And again, don't get mad. Like that was actually my fault, because like I said, I didn't contact the venue ahead of time to figure that stuff out. So you know, you just got to make it happen. There's no other way around it.
So let's do a part B, because you always have to make it happen. But do you? Is there a time or a threshold that you reach where you're like, yeah, no, and that you actually like? Have you ever been in that situation where you've canceled or you've not gone through with a gig because they are such a gong show on their end that you're like, this is going to make me as the artist look terrible, or my show's going to be awful, and you're not going to support it?
The show must go on.
The show must go on. Yeah.
Okay.
I was just going to say, if it kind of affects your safety and health, then obviously, like, that's where you kind of put up the barriers. Like, there's been quite a number of times where the grounding in a place is being really bad, and I continually keep getting shocked, and I'm touching everything, and I keep like playing my guitar, and then I smack my face on the mic. And I think like it's quite fair to just say like, I can't. I just can't. Unless you can work around it.
I've done that with weather. Like sometimes you do an outdoor venue, and the stage or the like tent over the stage is meant for like sun shade, and then it starts pouring rain, and there's pools of water on the stage, and for some reason, like you get put in a situation where they're like, yeah, no, you still should play, and it's like, I might get electrocuted and die. So I've canceled some of those, or just been like, we're cutting this set short. Safety.
That's where the line is, I think. Electrocution.
Yeah. And don't get electrocuted.
We stop at electrocution.
Poisoning's fine.
So let's take it then to the direction that you've done your pre sort of scouting of things. You've had the conversations. You know that generally things are looking like they're going to go well. You want to show up and again be pro when you show up. So respecting the time of the venue, the other bands that are there. Do you guys have any tips or tricks about how to be the most efficient that you can in get on the stage, play the damn songs, get off the stage so that you're not the ones holding up everything for the night?
Practice, like actually,
Yeah.
I think.
Yeah, practice, literally what he's saying, like, get your stuff, prepare, how do you say it? Say it better than I am.
Well, yeah, like practice setting up and tearing down your gear. Like,
Yeah.
do it at jam and just like make a system. You just like, this goes in first. And like one of my earlier bands, we literally had a piece of paper on the wall of our big cargo van door that was the layout of where everything went. And we just open the door and look at it and kick drum, you know, and like piece by piece get it all to fit in there, because it always just barely fits. There's never extra room. So that, and it's hugely important. Like other bands will not like you if you take forever to get off the stage.
Especially in those like festival situations
yeah.
or whatever, where you're like, you know, like Rifflandia or something.
Oh,
Ladies and gentlemen, Darcy Beck.
Hey!
Hey!
Nice to meet you, Darcy. I'm Craig.
So my other thing to add is sound check is not a rehearsal. Sound check is to do sound check. So don't come, well, this is a new song, so we just want to run through it a couple times just to make sure. No. If you're not sure, don't do it. Save it for the next show.
Play your loudest, like the chorus of your loudest song and like the verse of your quietest song, and hope that everything's working out.
Can we introduce the panelists?
Of course, yeah. So we've got Darcy. You do sound and production and all sorts of stuff like that,
Lots
right?
of
You wanna-
broadcast stuff and
Cool.
all of the above. Yeah, lots of production management at festivals.
Darcy actually saved me this summer at Sunfest. He was my monitor guy, and I had bronchitis really bad, and I just really needed some whiskey
Just happen to have a
to
hit
help
flask.
my voice, and he
But
really
you should
came
tell them where the
through for
whiskey
me.
came from.
It was Eric Church's whiskey.
Ah,
She's
nice.
opening, and I was like, she needs whiskey, and his engineer was quick to be like, we can help her out. And it's like, do, which one do you want?
Yeah, literally.
So it was famous whiskey. No?
Yes.
Cool. Let's actually go back then a little bit, and we'll let you answer one of the questions we just did a minute ago. Tell us about your worst sound experience, and kind of in hindsight, like what would you have done differently to either avoid it or to kind of deal with it better?
Oh, I can take that a lot of ways, actually.
Cool. All right.
Yeah. I think the worst sound experience would just be musicians that are disrespectful. As a technician, we're there to help you, and a pro technician will do anything. Even the grumpiest tech will always help you out if you're polite about things. And I don't want to mention any names, but a band showed up late, and they're the headliner for a festival, and for whatever reason they're late, and so we're rushing to try and help them the best we can. And the drummer insisted on hitting the drums while the crew was trying to wire it, and I politely asked him not to. And he says, "This is rock and roll. You better get used to it."
Yeah.
And the whole crew cleared the deck, and their set was cut short because we waited for him to finish smacking the drums. And actually, he lost his job from that.
Oh.
So unfortunately, that's a bad experience. It's just be respectful to your crew, because, like I said, even the grumpiest tech will help you out if you're polite. Mm-hmm. And we all know that, but clearly some people forget.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And kind of how I was saying, like, you can have, like, you maybe just drove 8 hours, you got a flat tire along the way, you missed the ferry, like, and you get there and you're exhausted, but if you're the nicest person, you don't know, like, maybe they've just done 3 days in the 30-degree weather, and they're exhausted from their festival experience or from whatever it is.
Yeah.
Like, you're all in the same boat. You're
we're
not
all
eating
tired,
far.
but there's one goal in mind, and that's to put on the best show that we can, kind of thing. So, yeah, I think, it just really comes down to, let's just be respectful to each other, and make the set. And you never know where you're going to get your whiskey from at that point, I guess.
For sure. Cool. So I think I'm going to insert a question, because I think we kind of missed one in here that's really crucial to the studio to stage part of things. So the artists obviously have one side of it. The sound tech is going to have a different perspective on it. But as an artist, when you record something, you have to kind of make a choice after you record it. Are we going to try and one-to-one this thing on stage? And if so, what tools do we need to have that we might not have, that person in the band that's going to be the 5th and 12th guitar tracks that we laid down that we don't have, or whatever it is? I would love you guys to address how do you make the choice of what you're going to present to the audience? Are you going to go out and actually play the record, and that's what people are going to hear if it's been on the radio or whatever? Or are you going to deliberately be a different version of yourself live, and that's the experience people are going to get? And then, of course, what tools might you use to help you achieve one way or the other? From the sound tech's perspective, I think it would be cool to sort of hear what those tools are that musicians bring to you that you have to deal with and go, oh, crap, I didn't know that they were going to have an XYZ, and then try and integrate it into what's going on. Ellie, do you want to start?
Yeah, I mean, I think our first album we just did it with the end game in mind, which is we want to do it so that we can replicate it exactly live. I don't know if we're going to do that for the next album because the landscape is changing a bit, whereas you have a lot more opportunity as an independent artist to have your music streamed, to have it synced, to have it out into the internet world and have listeners from all over the place. So my current thing is, should I make it this really great, amazing sound recording and have that what it is, and then have a different idea of what I'm going to do live? And that's totally your decision and your call. I, as a vocalist, and I play guitar as well, and I'm very used to controlling my guitar tone. I've got my pedals that I like, and I've got my amp sound that I like. And with my vocal sound, it was very the best amazing sound guys in the world that I've worked with, they're so busy in their lives. It's very unlikely that they'll have the chance to sit and listen to the whole album and really be like, oh, I know she needs that shot delay there, or she wants that transistor sound there. So I've started getting gear, and part of that's been because I work for TC Helicon now, and I've just had my eyes open to it because I didn't know before. Mm-hmm. So I've actually worked with Darcy with one of my new pedals, which is, I don't know what it's been like for these guys.
Yeah, it'd be interesting to know from your perspective, what's it like when somebody walks in and is like, okay, I'm using this.
I just think it's important when I see those pedals come in, I ask a lot of questions and see, sometimes they're like, that's where things open up and they go, well, actually, I've been working on this sound here or this sound here, and that's what sound check is for. If there's time, it's kind of like, sure, we get all your monitor levels set and everything, but then if there's time, I always say, hey, let's talk about your pedal. What sounds do you have? Mm-hmm. And then if they have problems, then that's when we discuss it, or they kind of go, well, I was wondering about this, and then we start digging deeper into it. And I really like to do that because the pedals now they're part of the show, mm-hmm. and it's just as important for me to go, hey, what are some of your other keyboard patches to what are some of your other effects that you have on your voice, right. And I want to make sure that they work just as well as anything. So yeah, it's definitely, I definitely put time into it when I see those pedals come out. But as what I am finding now, as time goes on, the musicians are learning to use them more and more. They're not just like, oh, I have a nice reverb. Mm-hmm. It's like people are using them a lot more, and I find I don't know if people are if more people are using them, so they're sharing information on how to operate them. But it's it seems like people know how to use them a lot better.
Ellie's probably just making really good tutorial videos for our products.
Oh, okay.
So a lot of times, people will say, hey, you're a great musician, therefore you must know how to run gear, and that's probably the furthest thing from the truth a lot of times. How do you deal with somebody who's very green in terms of, they bring something and maybe they're over their head with it and they don't actually know what they're doing with whatever the thing is? Do you feel comfortable kind of interceding and saying, hey, maybe you should leave that off the stage, or you kind of tell them that they can't do what they think they might want to do?
This is a question for me?
Yeah. Just because of
how do I deal with
the
it?
live sound tech.
Well, I mean, it's a little tricky because I don't want them to not use the equipment. And there's a little bit of personnel management in there because I don't want to call them out in front of the band also. But sometimes there isn't time to deal with things properly. But basically, I sort of answered the question already in a way, I feel, where it's just like, hey, what are you doing with this? Can I hear more things? And then that's where I can identify problems. But if there is time, typically what I do is I wait for the band to clear. And after sound check's done, if I can, I will grab that vocalist and we'll go out and go, hey, let's run through some of those a little bit more, And instead of saying you're doing it wrong, I always help them try and find the answer for themselves. I go, do you hear the difference there? So I try to educate as much as I can on the spot.
You're totally one of the good ones.
Yeah, he is.
Malcolm, do you want to kind of follow up on that whole, what are you going to do studio to stage in terms of your sound? And
my band just released an album. Well, it's been a year actually, so. But we just started using backing tracks for the first time, so that's a perfect example of of trying to get that studio sound to translate a little bit better live. And so that means a couple things. It means that you're playing to a click track, the whole band, probably, with in-ear monitors and stuff. So that's a big setup in itself. And then figuring out how to get tracks to play at the same time. And you can really throw whatever you want on those tracks, harmonies, keys, or more guitar parts, like you were saying. And it's been quite an experience. We've only done it for like 4 shows now, and we're not really even sure what it's like, because we haven't had a guy we know like Darcy or that's runs sound out there to like give us feedback, because we can't tell. It's coming through our ears. It doesn't sound anything like the same. But so far the reaction from the audience has been they haven't even noticed. So that's kind of exactly what we want, right? But seems like it's going to be awesome, and it's been fun to figure out, and it's kind of making like a whole new world of possibilities come to life. Like, okay, we could have the organ on the course, even though we don't tour with the organ player. And I don't think nowadays, I don't think people care, like the audience, where maybe they used to, because they'd be like, where's the keyboard player? But now they're just used to getting this super great product when they go to the show. And we can make that happen pretty well anywhere now, minus the venue without a sound system.
But you still sound great in your in-ears. So
yeah, exactly.
Alexandra, do you want to pick that one up as well?
I think like maybe especially if you're just starting out, like be very realistic with what you're capable of doing. I started performing as a solo artist when I was quite young, and I just played by myself. And as I've like evolved, like my music and my personality, who I am has evolved. I've come to know who I am, as like what I want out of music, what I want in my career, in my musical endeavors. So I think like, I mean, if you're in the studio and you're working on music, like the world is your oyster. Like you can do whatever you want there, and then it's your choice after that. Like what do you want to do with that music? I've seen some of my favorite artists play, like someone like Margaret Glaspie. Her first album was very like live off the floor, like bandy, so she could translate that quite well live. And you know, her path was like opening for really big artists, and then her career got bigger because of those opportunities she got from that. Someone like David Bazan, who is a Seattle artist and usually only plays house concerts, he put out this very interesting, like kind of like dancey sort of electronic album. And then when he toured it, it was like garage rock, and he just like played the bass sometimes, and like you can do whatever you want. It's just like it's what you want out of it. I think that's like the biggest thing. And yeah, be realistic, understand your gear, understand what you're bringing with you, and just give yourself time to like let it sit and like practice and figure out what tones you're trying to get and what you're trying to do. Just like know your intentions.
I actually, just because it's really interesting, I went to Nashville for another conference like this last month, and a man there named Tom Jackson, who I actually remember seeing him when we were like 8 years ago at another conference. And he's funny. He's like, he name drops everyone. He worked with Taylor Swift, and he worked with all these people. And but what his approach is, yeah, your album is one thing, and your songs are 3 minutes and 20 seconds, and they're prepared for radio, and they're prepared for listening on headphones, whatever. But your live show is a whole other thing, so you don't have to replicate your album. In fact, you should create moments for the audience to really being captured by it, and sometimes that means like building it up huge and then bringing it way down, and that maybe didn't happen in the album. And I think the reality is, if you're not Taylor Swift and you don't have like fans that you're totally married to, you can really play around with your live sound. It doesn't have to be like that exact riff and that exact hook that everyone knows and as intimately as whatever. So that's just another approach too. You can totally change it around.
Yeah, and I think sometimes you can pick and choose, right? Like you've got one song on the radio currently, and that's probably why people are there. You know, you nail that one a little bit closer to the album, and then the rest of the stuff you stretch out a bit more with it, and you get the familiarity. Let's turn that whole question a bit on its head then, because I think a lot of musicians are interested in what the heck do we sound like on stage? How did that gig go? You know, what is our live sound? Can you guys relay some of your experiences in recording yourselves or have you even attempted, or what you would do in order to set up to record yourself live, so that you can, either if it's just for playback for you, for your own sake, so you can actually do a post game wrap up and say, oh man, that part we thought was awesome, not so awesome, that kind of stuff, or actually to record some sort of live album that you were wanting to put out, or a single.
I've never done that. I feel like I've toured with a couple bands like where they would record every show they played and like sit in a circle and listen to it after, and I was just always like, interesting. Like, are we learning anything right now? I mean, like, I guess so, but I don't know. For me, like, the most important thing is like having good, like, if you're recording your show, like if you have an engineer who's like recording it, just have a conversation now, do like a run through, just hear it back, have them record a little bit of something. I think it's just like very important to keep evolving your craft and your stage performance and stuff. So I personally, I haven't really done that. I've done a few shows that have been filmed and stuff, and I kind of leave it at that. Like maybe once a year I'm like, okay, let's do like a live video or something and see, like, let's try something fun. But I don't know, I shouldn't have answered that. I can't really speak. I don't know why I'm talking. Why did I talk first?
Okay, so I'm going to add to that,
so.
and I'm probably going to say what I think the rest of us are thinking. Record yourself. Do it, whether you just hook your little Zoom up to the board. Every band that I've traveled with, we record and we listen to almost every show when we're traveling to the next, or we're sitting in the hotel room, and that's where you're going to go. Every night you're going to go, I didn't know you played that, or but you've changed it up there. I didn't know that you did that. And then it's like, because you don't hear these things live sometimes because you're so into what you're doing, or they're morphing show after show, and so you have to record yourself and listen to it. I mean, every time we've done that, someone will always say, I didn't know you were doing that, or you make a mistake and go, hey, why don't we, or you hear another song in there, then you break it down and change into another song. But you have to record yourself, absolutely.
It's tough love. Like the first time you listen back or you watch it, you're like, oh no, like we got to change everything. But it definitely helps and makes it quite real. Like if you think you're tight and you watch a video of yourself playing and it's not, that's the reality.
That's the other side of the coin.
Or the songs are 4 times as fast as you intended. That happens a lot too. So like, it's good feedback. I find it hard to do. A lot of the time I should do it more. We should bring this guy on the road. But,
that's where that click can come in handy, even if you're not playing to tracks or anything, and even if it's only the drummer on the click.
Totally.
I found that just like that way, especially for the stuff that's like, it's on the radio and you don't want to be at like 200 BPM on your ballad or whatever.
Even just like watching, we're very lucky in Victoria to have just diehard fans that go and film almost everything. So even if I don't release the videos that they've sent me, I can look at them and be like, wow, I look miserable on stage. Like, I should smile more.
Too, right?
Yeah, smile, for sure.
Or the other thing I was going to say was, I actually recorded I did that at Rock the Shores, and what I heard back was, like, I was amazing, but it was actually my gear. Just kidding. But my gear was peaking. One of my pedals was peaking, and I didn't realize that because I wasn't hearing it through the monitor, but I heard it through the front of house. And so I was able to go back and be like, okay, I need to adjust the output gain of one of my pedals so that doesn't happen. I don't peak again. So it really can be beneficial if you don't, because it's hard to keep track of everything while you're performing. But smile.
Don't listen to the advice I gave you.
Is there any particular type, like you said, a Zoom recorder? So people might not know what that is, but Zoom is a company that just makes like portable recorders, very popular little 2-track kind of things that you can plug in. Is that what you see the most commonly, or do people bring you like a laptop and an audio interface and a bunch of other junk to hook up? And how much you have to deal with that on the fly versus being advanced, that you know what's coming and there's some accommodation for it?
It's all over the map. It's all over the map. But for the most part, musicians just have their little recorder and they're like, can I plug this in? And they show up, and that's pretty standard. Some of the consoles now, you can multi-track off them quite easily, where you plug a laptop into them. But
or like a USB thumb drive, I think some of them support just like plonk and you're good to go.
But some of them you can plug. I've got a console that I record. 32 tracks into Pro Tools with, kind of thing.
Oh, wow, okay.
And a lot of the bigger bands will travel with that just for reference, even, because then you can sit down and go and actually solo particular instruments and really see what's playing. And I mean, but those are bands where typically people are hired, and then they're kind of like, they're really scrutinizing the playing kind of thing. So, but we don't want to go that direction.
I remember,
But no, everyone just typically shows up with a thumb drive for sure.
Yeah.
I remember a friend of mine went to Radio Shack. This was like only a few years ago, but he went to like Radio Shack and got one of those like tape recorder, cassette recorder things. And he literally would put on the stage and he was recording his sets. And the thing, I remember his takeaway was, after every single song I went, thank you very much. And so
I remember seeing the cassette recorder on the stage. Yeah.
thank you very much. So.
Yeah, that's a good thing to kind of segue into. Talk about transitions, right? So on an album, you record it, you've got some sort of break, or you've figured out how to get from song to song. Live, it's a whole different ballgame, and it's actually pretty bad to just stop after every single song. Can you guys talk about when you're rehearsing? Are you rehearsing the transitions and like how are we going to get in and out of this? How are we going to lead in the show? All of that kind of stuff.
You should. You definitely should.
Because it's like the worst thing ever, right? When the song stops and then the song stops and the song stops and you can't keep that energy going from the crowd.
That's like one of the kind of biggest time consumers for my band, because we've been playing the same songs for quite a while since we released the last album, but we love changing the set. So rather than practicing the songs, sometimes we're just building transitions. So we built an instrumental piece that fits between song A and B, and we work out what other songs it can combine with, so we can use that ending to combine with a number of songs and keep the set changing, because we don't want to come back to Victoria and play the same set 4 times in a row through a year kind of thing, if we don't have to. So we like doing that. And then I think a lot, well, you would know, both of you would know, you're both the front person of the band, where I am not, so I don't have to deal with this, but there's definitely something about communicating that the song is over, or that like, just captivating them.
Yeah, I remember someone was always like, don't forget to acknowledge the clapping, because as like, I am always like, oh my god, I just finished, okay, thank you. But yeah, just like, oh, thank you. And then I tend to ramble if I don't have kind of a predetermined, at least like bullet point list of the things I want to address. So in my set list, I'll be like, okay, this is where I'm gonna talk about this story, and it depends on the gig. If it's like a bar, like we're doing a Screaming Duke bar gig at 12:30 tonight, so I probably won't be talking.
Not that you're plugging your gig or anything. Yeah, 12:30 tonight at the Duke.
Because I do like to talk and tell stories, but actually, it's literally, this is the transitions thing. I never did that before, but tonight we did actually practice a transition, because I just saw I was like, this song ends really well, where I can take my guitar off, switch guitars, they can keep doing this thing, and then I can use a new guitar I change guitars a lot, so that's my big issue there.
Yeah, that's the main reason, guitar changes.
Makes you look cool when you change guitars anyway, right? Then you got tunings nobody knows, and like they can't figure out how to play your song. Cool. Have you guys ever played your album like front to back?
Live?
Yeah. Like, have you just gone and been like, hey, let's try playing the album all the way through?
No.
No.
Why not?
For me, it doesn't, because it doesn't work. Like, when you're, like, again, live is different than album. Like, if someone's sitting in do people do this anymore? Sit in the living room with their cigar and listen to an album front to back?
It's in quadraphonic sound.
Yeah, my album didn't really make sense to play live. Plus, my first one was 8 songs, which is almost enough for a full set, but depending on the set length.
Yeah.
That's the other thing, is sometimes you'll get a 30-minute, which I love a good 30-minute set. And sometimes you'll get an hour and a half, and you're like, okay, let's do some covers or whatever. So
that's where the transitions between the songs are like 6 minutes long.
Yeah. We're gonna take 3 solos in this one.
Well, I was gonna say that I think it's kind of tricky for some artists, depending on like the venue and where you're playing and like the setup. If you're like playing acoustic or amplified and stuff, like some artists, like their songs aren't like derived from like a melody. It could be like, like a sample pad or something. So it kind of depends on like how, like what the circumstances are. I have some songs where I'm like, I can't.
Yeah.
Like I just can't, because I am a solo artist and I do play with a band when I can. But the reality for me is like I write songs that I can't play live.
Yeah. And that's totally okay. I think that's part of the message too, is like you said, albums and live can be different, and they're different experiences for people.
Well, I mean, some of those songs, I can't, like they don't translate well live, but I've had them like placed in TV and film and stuff. So they've lived in a different way, which is, I mean, you just have to find the place for each song. I also just I just think it's fun to just like, I don't know, change things up. And like, if you don't have a song recorded, like start playing that. I don't know. Like I've just never played like an album front to back. I never have a set list. I'm the worst person to be on this panel.
But people still like coming to the show, so that's just another angle, right?
Yeah.
Is that like part of your thing is winging it in the moment, right? Yeah. Cool. Okay, so I want top tip that you would, if you were to give one thing, just to make sure you focus on every time. Is it the organization? Is it, you know, the speed? What is it about that we've talked about today that is the most important thing that somebody should take away?
Be nice to everyone always.
Ooh.
What context here?
No, I mean, just, you know, there's
Just as
so
an
many
artist in
things.
general kind
Yeah,
of
there's
thing?
so many things to juggle, right? You want to be successful, and it's like, you know, it's like starting a new workout and trying to do like 12 days a week of whatever. What is step one? What is the most important first step that you can manage that first time out to just feel like that gig went better than the gig before it?
I think it's like actually just, this maybe goes back to recording yourself, and make sure your product, your music is what you think it is, because that took me, my band, a long time to like get to. It was like, all right, we think we're good, but then we actually have to get, you know, don't compare yourself to your buddy's band, compare yourself to the headliners of this festival, and you have to get that good, and then it'll fall into place. You know, people will notice you're good, and they'll take you seriously.
Alexandra?
Yeah, just like be malleable and definitely know what you're trying to do. Like whether if you're in the studio, if you're live, like just know why you're making music, why you're on the stage, and don't be self-deprecating. Like a lot of artists when they're starting out, like they're just like at the end of a show, like I've toured with a number of artists, and you kind of get into like this sort of depressive pattern where at the end of the show they're like, oh, I sucked, like that show sucked. And just like, I don't know, just try to like, you know, hang out with your peers and learn from them, like you said. Just like try to keep like, you know, reaching for the top and just I don't know.
Be okay that you're not there yet, but you're on the way.
Just like give it time.
Yeah, for sure.
And work a lot. Like just keep rehearsing all the time.
A lot.
A lot.
Yeah.
Yeah. Cool. Okay, so we would love to open it up to some questions from you guys. If you have things that you would like to ask anyone on the panel, doesn't necessarily even have to be related to exactly what we're talking about. Just anything that you would like to know. I see a hand up. Stand up.
You're talking about backing tracks.
Yes.
How do you go about doing that? When you like, do you bring a?
We bring we tour now with I think it's Roland SPDX, or is it? Yeah, that sounds right. Anyways, it looks like a drum sample pad. It's like got different pads you can hit. But you don't, and it's got like for Marcus, our drummer, controls it, so he's actually got a foot switch hooked up to it, so he can just trigger it with his foot right beside his hi-hat. But essentially, we printed audio files that are the click track for each of our songs, and the cool thing about that is you can have tempo changes worked into it if you don't want to just play to a single. So we actually have ramps and stuff like that. And then you also, beside that file, you can think of it, you put the backing track files where you've put all of the instruments that you want in that file. So we keep it pretty sparse. We're just kind of testing this whole system out. But they're the same length, so they also line up, and you make sure you test it a bunch of times that they actually do line up, because they didn't the first time. And then once you're good, so now he just cycles through to like the song he wants to be on, and clicks go. We all hear beep, 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 and then literally we have a voice that goes 1, 2, 3, 4, and we're in. And the song's on. Onto the audio file, yeah. So there's one click and one audio file.
So did you go into that, like, was it an afterthought after you did your album, or did you go into recording your album with the idea in mind that you would want to?
It was an afterthought, actually. Yeah, I think both you mentioned that it doesn't have to be the same live. You're bringing so much more live, just in energy from performing, that if you're putting your all into it, they don't care if there's no organ, or most don't, I wouldn't think. But we were said, why not? And a lot of the bands that we're kind of comparing ourselves to are doing this, and I love how they sound. You know, if I go see July Talk, I'm like, wow, that was kick-ass. I want to sound that big, so why not? Just keep investing in it and working out new systems. So
And to add to that, a common thing, the next step would be a lot of people will actually bring an audio interface, and they'll have a click, and they'll actually have stereo backing tracks, and so all the backing tracks actually come down their own channels. But that's where you need to start traveling with your own engineer.
Yes.
So then that engineer, depending upon the room, they're going to push the backing vocals a bit more. Maybe there's some bass drops, they want to push it a little bit more. So that's where your engineer actually becomes another member of the band.
Yeah.
And then that way you might have a mix of your backing tracks, but you kind of go, oh, geez, the synth is a little too loud, but it's stuck like that. And so that's where you can actually start doing mixing show per show with your backing tracks.
It's kind of an interesting thing to talk about then when you're leaving the studio, if it's not your studio, or you're getting presented with here's your your mastered album, is like, yeah, we need the stems too. And to be able to actually articulate to the studio that, like, hey, we paid for this stuff, we need all of the files as well, so that because you may after the fact go, oh, we need backing tracks.
And always ask for instrumental versions too if you want to try and get into sync licensing and stuff. I've run into that where I was like, I didn't ask for those, and then it's been a headache to get them. And
that's a really good point.
Ask for your instrumentals, because if you do get those sync licenses, they're going to want the instrumental versions and the vocal versions.
Absolutely.
Being successful is little tiny drips of money from all sorts of places. That's one of them, right? Yeah, for sure. Cool. Anybody else got a question? Yeah.
What's the most popular recording program you're using now for recording music, and is it usable malleable with Pro Tools yourself?
So for like recording at the concert? Studio recording, well, like I think Darcy and I both use Pro Tools.
Yeah.
But that's not the easiest and cheapest by far.
Just don't use Audacity.
Stay with it.
But what you?
I would say, like, if you're wanting to start doing home recording, is that what you're kind of thinking about? Oh, yeah, Pro Tools. Okay, yeah. I mean, I used GarageBand for a long time, and the newest versions of GarageBand are like, there's plugins, and it was very like restricted before, and it was really frustrating. But although I wish that they would let you choose a different click sound. So you can get to a point, I would just say, just do it the cheapest that you can possibly do until you can't, until it's restricting you, and then you can go to the next step. And then there's Logic, which is another really popular, and it's like $200. It's really not that, whereas Pro Tools is like
$600 or something.
$600 or $700.
Yeah.
So.
I know a lot of people are now using Ableton too.
Yeah,
It's like very
Ableton
user
Live,
friendly.
yeah.
I think with like Darcy probably ran into this when you first look at a mixer or whatever, and you see like 5,000 knobs on the thing until somebody actually points out to you, actually that's just 12 knobs repeated a whole bunch of times, so you just need to learn 12 knobs. I think Pro Tools is or any digital audio workstation is like that, where just get used to using one track with like, how do I apply some EQ to the thing? Don't worry about 50 plugins on the thing and which compressor's there and all that. It's just like, look, record a guitar and okay, it's too trebly or bassy, and just start with those kinds of things. And then when you run into it, like you said, into either a restriction, it's probably going to be a knowledge restriction, right? So then, holy YouTube, or lynda.com or any of that kind of stuff, you'll find a tutorial for absolutely anything you want to do, and just start trying, because there's nothing that you're messing up at that point. I mean, you can blow the whole thing up and start over again, and there's really no penalty to any of it. You're not wasting tape. So I think it's just like try and try and try and try.
I think one other thing, because I have a lot of musician friends say, what should I use? What program? They ask that exact question. And GarageBand now is amazing, and it's free. I know Ableton, you can create some amazing things, but the learning curve on that is quite a bit. The new Logic, I don't use it, but I help people load it, and I teach them how to use it. And it's amazing. The plugins, the instrument plugins in it's great. But what I tell all my friends is, read and educate yourself, and you'll find the answer yourself. Go look and go read message boards, because people talk about it, and you'll find what's best for you.
Yeah, I'd love to touch on that, because as musicians, you typically start from an organic place, whether it's just singing with your voice or grabbing a guitar, and you're kind of learning these like tangible things. And then all of a sudden you're doing gigs, and you need to maybe have a base knowledge that you said earlier about how to use sound equipment, and really like educate yourself, because it is just as important to understand where the sound guy is coming from, and same with how to use recording gear or how to use gear. Like, understand that you're not going to be able to just plug it in and play. Like, you probably are going to need to spend 30% of the time that you spend mastering your other craft learning how to do this. And if you're going to really do yourself a favor, spend 100% of that. Like, learn how to use the gear that you're using, because you're just doing yourself a huge favor.
There's a really cool PDF that's been floating around that our tech support guys at TC Helicon used to refer to, and it was like another company's brochure, but there's this thing called the Yorkville PA Primer, and it really steps you through, like, what does gain mean, and what do I need to turn up that knob for versus the volume knob that's on, or the volume fader that's on the end of the mixing board, and it really goes through a lot of that stuff that if you can you print it out and take it with you if you got a bunch of gigs and you want to learn how to do stuff, it's a great reference. So just to shout out to another Canadian company, but it was one of those things that, people would come to us with all these questions about stuff that actually wasn't really related to our gear, and we could throw that back at them and they could go and then manage a PA system or understand how a monitor setup works or anything like that. So check that out if you can find it.
Any other questions?
Yeah, any other questions? Yes.
Could you go through a list of suggestions of other ways to address the audience and make the performance more, I guess, engaging other than just
Ooh,
Yeah.
that's my favorite.
Banter.
Alexandria is really great at it too because she's so freaking funny. But people just want to have a great time.
Yeah.
With you.
With you. They
Right.
want to be part of the experience. So the more that you can bring them in and just be like, I'm having a great time, and here's something really vulnerable about myself. Like, just so you know, I am terrified of like vending machines or whatever it is. Be real and be authentic, buzzword or whatever. But yeah, I like telling funny stories.
Yeah. Well, I also find it interesting, like, since I've started traveling, like, I've toured Europe quite a bit, and I end up playing in places where people don't really speak English, and I don't speak any other languages.
It is a challenge.
So I find that to be really interesting because it kind of challenges me to engage with an audience that I can't actually really communicate with. It's like, it has to be in, like, I don't know. It's really interesting to, like, have that kind of sort of situation rise.
Yeah, and actually to that point too, if you can't with English speak, because a friend of mine had the same thing, and she said the German guy after 10 minutes of her banter was like, "We don't understand you."
It's like the one representative who can speak is, go tell her.
But I mean, there's other ways you can do it. Like, again, if you're playing a song, you can take a moment to be like, like doing something where you're like, I'm holding on this note, and you're like expressing, like, I'm doing this really weird, funny thing, and the audience is like, I'm sitting on the edge of my chair with you because what is she gonna do?
Yeah.
Like, there's ways to just create those moments that people can really relate to, and it takes time.
Yeah.
I've been playing music since before I could talk. Like, I just like entertaining, and this comes as like I just love it.
So you go into it with the expectation it's gonna work, right? Rather than like the audience isn't going to be into it, you assume that they're going to dig whatever you're doing, and then you deal with the train wreck if it doesn't go well. It's like a comic telling a joke that bombs or whatever.
Right.
But like, if you don't go into it thinking, hey, they want to have fun with me, they're here to enjoy what's going on, so let's assume that's the case, and then go forward from there.
Ooh, and the other thing I always like to remind myself is 80% of the world, or even like 90% of the world, doesn't know what a chord progression is.
Yeah.
Doesn't know like how hard that riff was that you just. I played a gig where I was playing guitar, and I had the lead, and I was like, it was my first time ever where I was gonna play lead. I'm like, everyone's gonna be like, oh my god, she's playing a lead guitar riff. The camera guy that was filming like thought the dude on stage was playing the lead, so he was filming that guy, and I'm in the corner being like, oh my god, I'm playing a lead. Like, no one even noticed because I didn't tell them to notice. Like, tell them to notice. Go to the front of the stage.
Body language or whatever,
I am
Yeah.
playing the solo.
Yeah.
That's your band's job too. Make them like acknowledge that you're playing the solo.
Yeah.
Like, center your attention on where the attention's meant to be focused.
And if you're playing with like other artists, like that's a good opportunity for you to like engage. Like, you don't need to say anything. Like, it's how you move. It's how you're sort of like looking at each other. You don't need to talk. You don't need to do anything. You don't need to be funny. You don't need to be charming. Although like that's always like a plus, but just like let the music kind of speak for itself.
Yeah.
Oh, sure. Yeah, of course. Sorry, I've been asked to repeat the question. So this one was, we were talking about how do you actually speak with your audience and engage with them. So that's where that came from. Any other questions coming in? Love to hear some more.
Any online questions, Danielle?
Yeah, is there anything?
We can just maybe open the floor to online and have a quick.
Sure.
Oh.
Yeah, so we have been live streaming this whole thing, so we're all live on the interwebs. Oh my God.
Hi, interwebs.
So yeah, if there's any questions that we got from the Facebook audience or anything, we'll have to now sit here awkwardly for like the 30-second delay or whatever it is that goes out to Facebook.
Oh, yeah.
But, well, let's fill some time. So
I was gonna say, yeah, if you want to go back,
yes,
you can go to the TC Helicon Facebook page and you can watch
the whole thing again. Yeah, which is cool. Hey, show of hands, has anybody ever used a vocal processor live? I'm just kind of curious from the brand. Yeah, awesome. I know you. We did a video together. And there was another hand up in the back there. Awesome. How many of you guys didn't even know they existed? Okay, so they exist, but you don't use them. That's interesting. We can all chat later why that is, whether or not it's. Yeah.
I actually have a processor for my guitar.
Okay.
So I can probably plug my mic in and start playing with that.
Theoretically, yeah.
So the question was, he has a processor pedal for his guitar. Can he plug his mic in and play with it?
Yeah, so the answer is yes, theoretically you can, but the way voice processing is done is quite a bit different often than the way guitar processing is done. So you can definitely mess around. Things like echoes and reverbs and that kind of stuff are generally pretty, you can just do them and they sound pretty good. But if you try like pitch shifting, like an octaver or something on your voice, it'll probably sound pretty messed up compared to what it would sound like coming out on your guitar, which is where our sort of tech is better at listening to human voice.
The other thing too, and correct me if I'm wrong, the signal that comes out of your guitar and goes to a pedal is very different than the signal that comes out of your microphone.
Yeah.
Not even just your voice, but your microphone. So you might have some issues when it hits Darcy.
Yeah.
It's
more
don't
of a
even. If you show up with a guitar pedal, that's why TC Helicon. I'm just gonna say thank you. Every sound engineer on the planet's gonna thank you, because up until then. Oh, you want to have processing, so musicians are showing up with these funny little cables and guitar pedals, and it makes microphones sound horrendous. Yeah. It's but now TC's here, and it's the world is a better place. It really is.
Thanks.
It's true.
Yeah.
Cool. Any other questions out there? Somebody. Oh, there we go.
You're going to start looping your vocal.
Yes.
I'm starting to think about what are you doing with guitar. We talked. I mentioned Boss before. But TC Helicon, I've been told is fantastic. So
is Boss. It's all good. We're all friends. It's cool.
Looping a vocal, would you recommend 2 mics on that or 1?
Okay, so the question is, would you recommend 2 mics or 1 for looping vocals? I think it really depends on the situation you're in. If one of our sort of, in the last couple of years, big artists would have been Kimbra, and she uses one of our products particularly, but she runs 2 mics, and a lot of that is the redundancy thing. It's the whole like, what if our gear blows up? And nobody makes perfect electronics. Sometimes they just smoke out in the middle of a show, and that's it. So they end up running it so they can go back and forth between her looping product and just a straight mic into the board. But she's also got front of house that's running everything and doing a lot of cool things on her vocals that way. In our case, typically people will just run 1 mic into 1 product and then run it out to the PA from there, and the looping takes place in the product. Looping live is a really interesting thing, and it's totally off the topic, but who cares now? Do you guys use looping at all live, like actual recording the loops and playing them back?
Not yet.
Not yet. Ellie does because of TC Helicon.
I'm very new to looping, so I don't think I've actually ever performed live, because it's, again, for me, I need to know what I'm using inside and out before I do it in front of people. And actually, that was a really good point that Craig made, is having a contingency plan, because if your gear fails, you need to be able to the show must go on, so quickly snap into plan B. And like, gear does fail. It will happen to you. Nothing is perfect. Your guitar might snap in half. Like, the drummer might fall over and snap your guitar in half. So always have a contingency plan, whether it's strings, a second guitar, other electronics, or whatever it is.
Rent a second guitar if you just need one. Like, for the $10 for you to go to Long McQuaid and get anything that sits on the side of the stage that can prevent you from being like, twang, oh my God, is such a lifesaver.
Yeah. It's a lot quicker to grab a second guitar than to change your string.
Mm-hmm.
For live looping, I know one group I've worked with is Whitehorse. I don't know if you know them, they're a duo. And they both loop, but they both jump around on different instruments and loop and match up with each other. So if you're really interested in live looping, check out Whitehorse. They're a Canadian act. They're amazing.
They're killer.
Yeah. And if you are looping, don't bore us. Get to the chorus. Practice how quickly you can layer up those things. This is just, from seeing so many loop artists. The first time anybody ever sees a loop pedal in public, they're like, wow, that's so cool. I can hear it going over again and over again and over again and over again and over again. And please add something else to what's going on. Oh my God. really get good at your gear and know that you can go like, hey, like if I were listening to this as the audience, you know, they're really in it for the built-up sound. So don't let it just sit there with your like, you know, your beatbox thing for like 12 bars, like go, 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 go. That's definitely good for engaging people. Otherwise, it gets boring pretty quick.
Can I just, sorry. Can I just add, like, this is just like a personal pet peeve because I've seen a couple artists who have used loopers. It's like when they're like explaining to the audience how a looper works. I actually just, I would say don't do that. Just please don't do that. Be like, so my vocal, like it goes through here. And then I've seen that and it takes like, you know, 2 or 3 minutes and like, I don't know. It's just like, don't do that. Like, don't worry about it. don't let your entire performance hinge on the fact that you're using like a looping pedal or something. Like, don't let it become like almost gimmicky. If you're using it, just own it and do a really good job with it.
It's kind of wizard behind the curtain, right? Like,
Exactly. No. People want magic. Just leave it.
Yeah, exactly. I was gonna say to Malcolm's point earlier too, where people are way more accepting now of like backing tracks. Same thing with loopers. A lot of loopers have the ability to store loops in them, so you can create your loops ahead of time, store them in there, and then just trigger them so that we don't have to sit there for 3 minutes just to get to the first verse.
Yeah, it's like do one live so that people get what's going on, and then you can use the canned ones after the fact.
Yeah.
Cool. All right. Well, we will wrap it up if there's no more questions in the audience. Is anybody else who wants to weigh in? Nothing on Facebook. The internet lamos don't have any questions. I'm looking at you, internet, wherever you are. All right. Well, thank you so much for coming out, everybody. I hope everybody got something out of what we had to offer today. There's a bunch of special thanks that I'd like to give at the end here before we clap a lot and embarrass these guys. There's so many people that make your tickets cheaper, and it's really good that they're financially supporting what's going on here. So DoubleTree by Hilton, Royal McPherson Theatre Society, Ticket Rocket, Fort Tectoria, a Songwriters Association of Canada, and Atomique all pitched in a lot to make these kinds of things happen. So I just wanted to really make sure that we all thank them thoroughly in our applause as well. So now embarrass these guys.